Hello, everyone. Today we are joined by Carey Lowdermilk, who is special education teacher at a local high school, and she's been teaching for about 12
This is my
years.
12th year.
12th year. It's good that you're here. How's it going?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing very well.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to talk to you about is RTI, or response to intervention. Tell me everything you know.
Well, I'm the coordinator for my campus, and if there's a student who is not being successful in their class, a teacher will fill out a response to intervention form, and then it's my job to give out other response to intervention forms to all of the teachers for that student. And it's basically a questionnaire. What are their grades like? What are their state assessment scores? What problems do you see in the classroom? What maybe some weaknesses that they have that the teachers are seeing, and then I gather up all that information and we have a response to intervention meeting on that student. And there are several different committee members, and as a team we look at this student and talk about them and try to come up with some interventions that can happen inside the classroom. And then we come up with an individual plan for that student, an individual intervention plan, and we send out that plan to all of the teachers. And so the teachers are supposed to sign off that they did receive it and they're supposed to follow what's in that plan.
So, is RTI, which is the response to intervention, is it just for special education
Oh no,
students?
it's not for special
No.
education students. Once a student's already receiving special education services, they have their own plan through special education. Response to intervention is before a student goes to special education. So it's just any general ed student who is having problems, and it's just a way to try to help the student provide some interventions before going to special ed.
And where do these interventions come from? Do people just kind of pull them out of the air? Or?
Well, there are strategies that you can find on the internet, textbooks. There are strategies that have proven to be successful for students, and so the person who comes up with the strategies just needs to do a little bit of research on what strategies have worked before.
Okay. And is it a good idea to wait till the end of the year to?
No, really, it should be as soon as a teacher is seeing that there are problems. It could be at the 3 week progress report time, it could be at the 6 weeks, first 6 weeks when the report card comes out. Anytime that a student is falling behind significantly from the rest of their peers, and anytime a teacher thinks that there is a problem and it could be like an ongoing problem, they should fill out a referral.
So, if you have a student that, let's say, fails a math test, should they run to you then?
Not a one-time thing. It needs to be a pattern. So it should be over a course of several weeks. It needs to be a pattern, not a one-time thing. Everybody can fail a test once. It's just an ongoing pattern that a teacher sees.
What do you mean by several weeks?
Well, like I said, maybe at progress report time, 3 weeks usually when grades come out is a good time to see. 3 weeks, we have progress reports. 6 weeks, we have report cards, and especially if it's more than one class. If a student is failing math and science and English, then that's definitely a cause for concern because it's more than just one area.
Okay, now you put them into RTI. You create this intervention plan using these strategies that you found on the internet or wherever. How long do you keep them in RTI?
Well, it depends. You're supposed to meet about once a month on and see how, and you get feedback from the teacher. So you'll send out something saying, okay, so how are they doing? How are the interventions working? Are they being successful? If the interventions are being successful, I would give it at least 2 or 3 months to see that it's successful for 2 or 3 months. Then you can dismiss them from RTI.
Okay. What about if they're not being
If they're
successful?
not being successful, that's when the committee needs to come back and say, these interventions are not working, what else do we need to do? And so we need to tweak the plan and come up with some different strategies.
Okay, how long would you keep a student in RTI before you moved on to 504 or you moved on to special education?
Well, I would say several months for sure. And again, it needs to be a pattern. If it's just one class, then maybe that needs to be the focus on doing different strategies. But if it's a pattern to where it's multiple classes, multiple issues, then that's when you would refer maybe to special education. But it's not going to be a very quick process. It needs to be several months, maybe even a full school year before you can actually get enough information to determine whether the student needs to be referred to somewhere else.
Okay. Now you mentioned teams. Who are members of these teams?
Well, at my campus, I like to have one of the students' teachers, the counselor. Um, I have a dropout prevention specialist. I invite her, the nurse, especially if there's a medical issue that might be the cause of some of the problems. So I guess it really depends on what the problems are. You know, if it's a medical issue, then you definitely want the nurse. A counselor is always a good person to have because they have direct involvement with grades and credits and classes and stuff. And you definitely want one of the teachers there for sure that knows the student.
Do you involve the parents and the student?
Not necessarily. You can, but it's not necessary to do because it's academic focused. So the parents aren't at school, and so really it's the people who know about the student at school and pertaining to academics.
Okay. If you have the student doing RTI, are they doing it in the classroom with
Yes,
their-
the strategies are being done by the general ed teacher in the general ed classroom.
Okay, so the general ed teacher doesn't get an assistant, an RTI assistant?
No, it's just strategies. Sometimes it's accommodations, things that can be done in the classroom pretty easily.
Okay. Now, you said you're at a high school.
Mm-hmm.
Should RTI start at a high school?
Really, no. The best case scenario would be to start at elementary school. Usually by the time they get to high school, it's more accommodations that are needed, but at the elementary level, you're talking about skills. So if a student has an issue with reading or math calculation, you can actually get specific skills involved that they need to work on. At the high school level, by that point, the student is pretty much, they know their skills and they're not going to probably have a lot of difference as far as different strategies are concerned in their academic performance.
Now, you work at a school that has a high immigrant population and students that their parents may be migrant workers.
Mm-hmm.
Does that play into the RTI and needing extra help? The fact that the student moves around a lot?
I really haven't come across that personally. I could see where if a student moves around a lot, they probably do have gaps in their learning, and that definitely would enter into their performance, and that might be to try to figure out what those gaps are, what those skills that they are missing, and then those are the skills that you would work on with that student.
Okay. Is there anything you would like to add?
I don't think so. I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.